Hello again, welcome back to my channel. I thought for the second video here that we would go into a general orchid care with regard to watering for beginners. And with regard to watering, we'll go into Paphiopedilums, matching my name, the right path, as the title says. Now, Paphiopedilums, aka lady slippers, are known to be from parts of like Southeast Asia, and they grow primarily on like the ground. But with regard to them growing on the ground and not in the ground, they tend to grow on the top layer. So with regard to watering, we want to water these orchids while the media is still moist, sort of approaching a dryness, and not necessarily dry as we would with phals. With regard to paths specifically, I do tend to pot them, and other growers tend to pot them in opaque pots. So pot weight is a great way to know when you have to water your path, and we'll get into that. But generally speaking, there are two seasons, a warm season and a cool season that orchids grow in, that will tell you how you need to water. For me, living here in a small apartment in Maryland, I don't have too much of a pronounced difference in the 4 seasons, but I do have a bit of a difference in the 2 seasons. And as with everyone, you'll notice the difference in the 2 seasons that I learned from a page called Brad's Greenhouse, I think it is going to be Halloween to Valentine's Day, and alternatively Valentine's Day to Halloween, which will give you the differential warm versus your cool season. Now for Paphiopedilums, they do tend to bloom in all seasons. So you'll have paths that bloom when it's warm and paths that bloom when it's cool, right along with the phals. However, the care should be sort of the same no matter the blooming, dependent on the season. So jumping into the warm season, which is Valentine's Day, February, to Halloween, October, here in my apartment, that signals a temperature variation of a high of between 75 to 85 and maybe a low of 68 to 73. Now, the reason why I have such variation is because there are slightly different temperature ranges depending on the shelf. The bottom shelves do tend to be a bit cooler, and the top shelves tend to be a bit warmer as cold air does drop and heat does rise, as we know. Now, you want to water your orchids whenever the medium is approaching that dryness. For me, during the warm season, it's about 3 to 4 days, which averages to about 2 times a week. Now, if your pot's not completely dry, or excuse me, because we're talking about paths, if you feel that your pot has some wetness but the top is dry, you might want to just give it a spray. I do spray my orchids on watering day if I feel like they don't need a full watering. Now, jumping on to times where you will find that the orchid does not need a full watering is the cool season. Now, the cool season, conversely, is going to be starting Halloween to Valentine's Day, so October to February. Here, again, growing in my small apartment, the highs tend to be between 73 and 77, but I do get a significant drop between 60 and 68. Now, there's an anomaly between at times where the temperatures will drop below 60, but it's very rare. I don't have long periods where that happens, and for the most part, my orchids can sustain a temperature drop that low for a small period of time. And normally for me, that period is between October and November before I start playing with putting the heat on, because the heat is eventually what balances back out the temperature. But in between that time, I'll have, the weather is unpredictable, so you'll have nights that drop in the 50s, so your indoor temperature will reflect that. If, like me, you have your windows open during that time. Jumping back in, you of course want to water as it approaches dryness. For me, that cool season is about once a week, so 7 to 8 days. Sorry about the noise. My neighbors are coming in and out at this time, and I'm not re-recording this video. And jumping back into that watering, once a week, never less than that for me. The pots don't completely dry, and the orchids actually, you will find out, will actually survive a bit more dry than they will overwatered. So again, if you're in that limbo where you feel like you don't know if you want to water, it's okay to do that top spray. I've been doing this for 2 years and it seems to work. I can't even say seem. It does work. And the last thing that I want to leave you with watering for Paphiopedilums, which generally is as they approach dryness, is you may sometimes want to look into the species. So as you can see, I have a pretty expansive collection, which I've purposely done. And there are certain species during the cool season, especially if your temperatures drop. For example, here on my low shelf, such as Delenatii, Micranthum, Malapoense. A lot of these Paphiopedilums come from areas that are high in elevation or just in general have a cool down in the winter. And what that cool down will signify is that the plant does not need to be watered. And one way that you'll easily notice that is if you notice how the plant grows during the grow season. So when it's warm, you have to see how fast the plant grows, how slow the plant grows as it's leaving that, because during some parts of the cool season, it may stop growing. And if it stops growing, you want to stop watering and especially stop fertilizing. Now with Paphiopedilums, again, you don't want to let the media dry out. So that top spray sometimes may become a habitual routine for, you know, a month or two during the cool season for certain paths. But again, that's something that you want to get into if you're going to go and buy different species. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to water your paths as they approach that dryness cycle. And that's going to vary. It really is. But as a rule of thumb, especially for us living here in the States, you want to kind of simplify your growth season to maybe even what I use. You may find something different, but I found that Valentine's Day to Halloween, and conversely, does kind of work for the warm and cool seasons. And lastly, how you water. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the most common way to water is just to go ahead and run water through the pot, because again, we're buying pots that have holes in them. Some people do go ahead and do that bottom method of watering, which sometimes I do with my paths because I grow in all bark. But I try to suggest staying away from bottom watering because you don't know how much you're soaking the pot, and having the water run through is just a lot more easier and safer. Especially if you're in an instance where you just bought the orchid or you don't know what's in the pot, or if that's just not your style. And in some next videos, we'll definitely get into fertilizing with paths. You want to make sure that they're fertilized definitely less, a lot more less than your phals. Most phals are heavy feeders, and conversely, paths are very, very light feeders. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with that. At the end of this video here, I'm going to go ahead and throw my social media handles up there for anyone who wants to follow. Again, I'm on Instagram, I'm also on Facebook, and my name is The Right Path, indicative of the Paphiopedilums. That are my favorite orchids, as well as the phals, but paths take the cake for me, mainly because they tend to be a little more cute outside of that blooming phase with the mottled leaves. Again, another video for us all. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for staying tuned to the end of this video. Bye-bye.